This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Heather Sells. We begin in the Middle East with what is being described as a sabotage attack on 2 Saudi oil tankers and a Norwegian-flagged vessel. The incident happens during a time of increasing tensions between the U.S. and Iran. We are joined now by Mark Martin in the CBN newsroom with more. Mark.
That's right, Heather. Sunday's alleged attack in which the 2 Saudi oil tankers and the Norwegian-flagged vessel were damaged happened in the Gulf of Oman off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. Now, details of what exactly happened remain unclear. It made the region, which is extremely important for global energy supplies, less safe for shippers. Now, following the attack, which Gulf officials described as sabotage, the U.S. issued a new warning to sailors, and the UAE's regional allies condemned the alleged attack. The UAE says 4 ships were actually targeted off one of its port cities. Gulf officials declined to say who they believe is behind the alleged attack, but the U.S. has alerted ships that Iran or its proxies could be targeting maritime traffic in the area. The United States also has deployed an aircraft carrier and B-52 bombers to the Persian Gulf in response to alleged threats from Iran. Tensions are mounting between the U.S. and Iran over the unraveling nuclear deal with world powers. U.S. officials told the Associated Press that American naval investigators were helping the UAE with their investigation. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo departed from Joint Base Andrews in Maryland late Sunday night. He changed the schedule for his latest trip to Europe, deciding to stop in Brussels instead of Moscow to talk about Iran and other issues with leaders in Europe. Tensions increased after President Donald Trump withdrew the U.S. from the 2015 nuclear deal between world powers and Iran. He also restored sanctions that have taken their toll on Iran's economy. Iran warned last week that it would start enriching uranium at higher levels in 60 days if world leaders did not come up with new terms for the deal. Saudi Arabia's energy minister said the alleged attack did not lead to any casualties or oil spill. He did say it had an effect on the security of oil supplies to consumers all over the world. Iran's foreign ministry requested more clarification about what exactly happened with the vessels. He also warned against any conspiracy orchestrated by ill-wishers. Heather, back to you.
Thanks, Mark. And our senior international correspondent, George Thomas, is following developments in the region. And George, talk a little bit about where this happened and what it means for global energy and insecurity there.
Yeah, very significant. So let's go to the map to give you a sort of a perspective of where this actually happened. You look at it right there, the location of the sabotage. The officials from the UAE, that's the United Arab Emirates, say that this alleged attack on these 4 vessels took place off the coast of the UAE in a port city called Fujairah. Now, this is about 85 miles. Keep the map right there. It's about 85 miles from the Strait of Hormuz. Why is this important? Because every day, Heather, as oil comes out of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Oman, they have to go around that Strait of Hormuz. And about 16 million barrels of oil pass through that tiny choke point. And that represents about 40% of the crude that is traded around the world. So attacks on oil vessels are very, very rare in this part of the region. And so when this does happen, it is obviously of big concern. Looking at the indications, looking at the actual blast there on the back end of the hull, nothing very significant. I mean, officials from Saudi Arabia and the UAE say there was no oil spill, no structural damage, significant damage to the vessel. But clearly, I mean, perhaps maybe a small IED may have been placed. Obviously, it raises big questions about the vessels that are coming out of that part of the region. But again, we're not sure where this is going to go, but we will probably get more information in the hours ahead.
Yeah, what do you think this means going forward as tensions ratchet up? What are we talking about militarily wise?
Well, clearly, you know, we have, as Mark, as my colleague mentioned, you know, we have an aircraft carrier, we have B-52s that are in the region heading, steaming right for that particular choke point. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told CNBC, you know, he said, quote, "We're not going to miscalculate. Our aim is not war." He said, however, quote, "Our aim is a change in the behavior of the Iranian leadership, the head of Iran's elite Revolutionary Guard Air Force. He said, if Americans make a move, we will hit them in the head. He said basically that the warning was sent to the United States. Obviously, both sides are not backing down. The pressure continues, not just the economic, but clearly now the military pressure on the Islamic regime.
Mm-hmm. And talk a little bit about the economic challenges for the country right now with U.S. action recently and how much of this is just stemming from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very significant. In fact, the president of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, on Sunday went before the public and said to the Iranians, listen, you need to prepare for the times of between 1980 and 1988. If you remember of your history, that was a time that Iran and Iraq were at war. But what is very significant about this time period, Heather, is that back during the 80s, there weren't crippling sanctions against Iran's banks, oil industry, manufacturing, the industrial, there were sanctions on arms and so forth. But I think personally that the economic dire straits that they are facing today is worse than what they've ever experienced. Today, the one US dollar was trading on the currency board in downtown Tehran. $1 fetched you about 160,000 Iranian rial. In comparison, last year, you would get about 50,000 rial on the black market. Huge inflation. And as you can imagine, people's salary is not increasing as this inflation explodes.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I want to ask you too, kind of unrelated but interesting, the Iranian government has ordered men not to look at women. Yes. What is this all about?
Well, you know, in a way, maybe, okay, it's not related to the attacks on the oil tankers, but it is related to the ongoing frustration that so many Iranians are facing today. Last month, Muslims around the world marked the beginning of the holy month of Ramadan. And so the Iranian regime is telling Muslims in Iran, listen, as a way, they're encouraging women, please continue to veil yourself. In fact, try to put more restrictions on yourself, try to be completely veiled. And then they told men, please don't look at men directly. They also said you're not allowed to play music in your car. You're not supposed to eat or drink during the time of prayer and fasting. But again, all of this coming at a time when Iranians are increasingly frustrated. In fact, just about an hour ago, I sat down with a leader who does work inside of Iran. He's from Iran, but now does work with the underground church. And I asked him, what about this idea of men not looking at women? What's this all about? Here's what he said.
I think the main reason is that the government is really frightened because especially the young generation are fleeing from Islam, and they just want to do it with pressure, that's saying that, okay, we have these rules and you have to follow it. And people are really tired with all the economic pressures, politic pressures, the conflicts between the government of Iran and the United States. I think the best way to pray for my people is to find Jesus, because all these Islamic rules, all these pressures, there is just one key. If their heart will change, everything will change.
And obviously he says Jesus is the answer. We need to pray for the nation of Iran. Incidentally, today in downtown Tehran at a major university, there were protests by both men and women against the regime about the tighter restrictions on wearing the hijab and this whole idea of men not looking at women. Not sure how that they're going to enforce that. But again, it's in this convulsion of all that's taking place in Iran that the frustrations are getting higher and higher by the day.
Oh, wow. Well, really a great time to pray. George Thomas,
Exactly.
Thanks for your insights.
You're most welcome.
We'll have more on these stories and others on Faith Nation this evening, and you can watch it here on the CBN News Channel. Patrick Shanahan, the acting Secretary of Defense, took a trip to the southern border over the weekend. Shanahan spoke to Border Patrol agents and other officials at the McAllen Border Patrol Station in Texas. He assured them the Pentagon would not withdraw its military support prematurely. He also said he intends to accelerate plans to secure the border even without the Pentagon's help. More than 4,000 military troops are currently stationed at the border, including active duty and National Guard. Well, after vicious verbal attacks on pro-life advocates by a Pennsylvania lawmaker, more than 1,000 pro-lifers showed up at that location to say they won't be shut up nor give up as they fight for the unborn. CBN's Paul Strand tells us what happened.
Hundreds came here to protest a Pennsylvania state representative's recent verbal attacks against pro-life sidewalk counselors outside this Philadelphia abortion clinic. Brian Sims put out a video of himself blasting a woman who was merely praying outside the clinic.
An old white lady telling people what's right to do with their bodies. Shame on you. Shame. Shame. Shame on you. There's no faith that tells you you are right and everybody else is wrong.
Sims then basically offered a bounty for information on 3 teenage girls praying here.
A bunch of pseudo-Christian protesters who've been out here shaming young girls for being here. And so here's the deal. I've got $100 to anybody who will identify any of these 3.
The pro-life advocates who came to this clinic told CBN News they won't be intimidated or stopped because abortion must be fought.
We are not going to continue to be bullied as pro-lifers. I am sick of this idea that just because we are Christians, we cannot stand up and defend ourselves, that we cannot stand up and defend our unborn brothers and sisters.
We need to be able to be out there and offer alternatives to these women going in.
We are calling on State Representative Brian Sims and all those who dare to harass and violate the First Amendment rights of the constituents here in Philadelphia to step down.
Sims accuses the pro-lifers of targeting and hurting women. But one lady told CBN News from personal experience it actually hurts women if they're not warned about the physical and mental impact an abortion can have on them.
If anybody's ever had an abortion, including myself, have. So first of all, unless you've had one, I don't really think you have the right to talk about it because you don't know the experience. And quite frankly, most people who have wouldn't wish it on their worst enemy because the emotional aftermath never leaves you.
National pro-life leaders came here to call on Sims to stop trying to shame women and girls who are exercising their rights. They say the real shame is the 61 million lives lost since the Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion. That's why they and countless others are going to continue to pray and counsel outside here and other clinics all across the country. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from outside the Elizabeth Blackwell Planned Parenthood in Philadelphia.
On Saturday, Vice President Mike Pence told the graduating class of Liberty University that they need to be ready for attacks on their Christian faith. In his commencement address, the vice president also said that persecution of Christians around the world is growing more intense.
The truth is, we live in a time when the freedom of religion is under assault. Yesterday, I was informed by the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom that today, Christians suffer more persecution around the world than any other religion. In fact, the United Kingdom released a report just last week that said persecution of Christians worldwide is near genocide levels. Throughout most of American history, it's been pretty easy to call yourself Christian. It didn't even occur to people that you might be shunned or ridiculed for defending the teachings of the Bible. But things are different now. Some of the loudest voices for tolerance today have little tolerance for traditional Christian beliefs.
And Pence himself has come under attack for some of his Christian beliefs, including those on traditional marriage. Up next, more on the fight between lawmakers in Texas over a bill that would have protected ChickFilA and other businesses from religious discrimination.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to His children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I Wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
The Texas LGBTQ Caucus has effectively blocked a bill that would have protected ChickFilA and other businesses from religious discrimination. The measure would have prohibited local governments from taking any, quote, adverse action against a business because of its owner's contributions to or membership in a religious organization. The move comes in the wake of San Antonio's City Council vote to ban ChickFilA from its airport, citing its charitable contributions to what the council considered to be anti-LGBTQ groups. ChickFilA currently gives to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, the Salvation Army, and the Paul Anderson Youth Home, as well as to local organizations across the country that help to alleviate youth homelessness and poverty. The company says it has no political agenda in its giving. Right now, Texas-based First Liberty Institute is investigating the San Antonio Council's move to ban ChickFilA, and attorney Keisha Russell joins us now with more. Keisha, thanks so much for joining us. What are your thoughts on what just happened in the Texas House?
Well, it's unfortunate, but the Senate version of that bill is still alive, and I think it's really important to note that the Constitution and federal law already protects ChickFilA and their religious beliefs and their affiliations. So the bill, at least in this case, isn't really necessary to protect ChickFilA, although it's probably necessary in a lot of other situations going on in Texas.
So there's a possibility this bill could still move forward in Texas.
That's right. There is a Senate version of the bill, and that's still alive.
All right. Have you heard from any other businesses in Texas besides ChickFilA that are concerned about this bill and what's going to happen with it?
Not specifically. We hear from religious organizations all the time about their concerns about, religious protection overall. And what happened to ChickFilA, I think it happened to any religious business. And so everyone should really be concerned about what's going on here.
You believe that the San Antonio City Council discriminated against ChickFilA when it banned the restaurant from its airport, and you are investigating. Tell us about the latest on that investigation.
Sure. So our inquiry really has to do with evaluating San Antonio's actions, their statements about what they did to ChickFilA, and really looking at that and then handing off everything that we find to the proper government officials, including the Texas AG's office, the Department of Transportation, who we wrote about the situation, and making sure that everyone can, really hold San Antonio accountable for what it did to ChickFilA.
And if you do indeed find that there was discrimination, what might be the outcome of your investigation?
Well, there could be a number of outcomes. We'll certainly, hand off all of our information to the Texas AG's office, like we said, to the Department of Transportation, and making sure each and every government agency that can enforce federal law and the Constitution will be informed. And if anyone wants to know more about it, they can go to firstliberty.org to
all
stay
right,
to
Keisha
stay
Russell
abreast.
with First Liberty. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
And stay tuned. We will be back right after the break.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Superbook fans, here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
No super balls, man. Come with...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
President Trump meets the Prime Minister of Hungary today. Viktor Orban is a somewhat controversial figure, some accuse of using his political power to limit opposition. But he is also supported important changes to the Hungarian constitution, protecting Christian values, including the family and the unborn. Dale Hurd reports from Budapest on a renaissance of Christianity in Eastern Europe.
In a time when most of Europe is in the grips of atheism, there is a nation where Christianity seems to not only be holding its own, but some say is thriving. Imagine a government that is unabashedly Christian, that thinks Christian values are worth defending, that wants to protect and even nourish the family. Welcome to Hungary. Hungary's constitution is explicitly Christian. It says that marriage is between one man and one woman, and that life begins at conception. It even includes the phrase, God bless the Hungarians. Hungary's faith church, with 300 branches, is one of the largest Pentecostal churches in Europe, with 70,000 attenders. And the Hungarian government has taken on the role of protecting Christianity. It's even set up an office to help persecuted Christians worldwide. When CBN News brought to the world the story of Sweden's threat to deport Iranian actress Aydin Stranson back to Islamic Iran, only one nation stepped up and offered her asylum: Hungary. The Hungarian government says taking in persecuted Christians is our moral and constitutional duty.
Hungary wants to protect the European values, the European Christian and Jewish values.
Hungarian policy analyst István Poda says Hungary has only returned to its roots as a historic bastion of Christianity, dating back over 1,000 years, and despite almost 200 years of Muslim Ottoman rule, and after World War II, Soviet communist domination. Secretary of State Zoltán Kovács.
You have to stick to your traditions and legacies. Europe's legacy is a Christian legacy, not necessarily in a religious form, but most definitely in a cultural form.
And it's this belief that has Hungary locked in a battle with the European Union over migrants. Mr. Orban has accused the EU of trying to Islamize Europe, and Hungary has infuriated Brussels by building a fence to keep illegal migrants out. The European Union is ticked because Viktor Orban has told Brussels to essentially take a hike when it comes to open borders. Hungary has seen the terrorism and chaos caused by migration in Western Europe and has said, not here. The European Union has even gone to court to force Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic to take in migrants. Mr. Orban has accused Brussels of blackmail.
Securing the borders to stop illegal migration is indeed a solution, and is the only way actually to reinstate law and order at the borders of the European Union, and not the other way around.
Kovács says it matters that most of the migrants trying to enter Hungary are Muslim. And he says Western European nations are paying a heavy price by pretending that Islam doesn't matter.
We've been living together or living close to Islam for centuries in the past, and we all know about it. So that's why it does matter who is coming and in what manner people are coming.
Orban is often portrayed in the Western media as sort of a version of Vladimir Putin, an undemocratic strongman. In fact, at an EU summit a few years ago, the European Commission president reportedly greeted Orban with the words, "Hello, dictator." Hungary is certainly not a dictatorship. But Orban's critics accuse him of corruption and using the instruments of government against his political opponents, including the recent billboard campaign against billionaire George Soros.
What we see today in Hungary is the shameless use of public money, of tax money, to formulate pro-government messages.
Since 2010, the Hungarian government has been continuously weakening the system of checks and balances in Hungary and weakening democratic institutions.
But Orban, a man who even his critics concede is a skilled politician, doesn't have a serious political rival. He will probably remain in power, meaning Hungary's standoff with the European Union over migrants is likely to escalate. But it also means that Hungary will continue to have a government that thinks Christianity is worth protecting. Dale Hurd, CBN News, Budapest.
After the break, a special ceremony at the Vatican during Sunday Mass yesterday, what the Catholic Church is celebrating.
As the world watches from the outside,
it's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
The Catholic Church has just welcomed 19 new priests. The Pope ordained the men in an elaborate ceremony on Sunday in St. Peter's Basilica. Wearing white robes, the seminarians laid down before the altar during the ceremony in a sign of obedience to the church authority and to God. The men come from Italy, Croatia, Peru, Haiti, and Japan. They range in age from the mid-20s to the mid-40s. The ordination comes as the Vatican is threatened by widespread scandals of pedophile priests and abuse cover-ups. And that is it for this edition of NewsWatch. You can find more on the issues that you care about most at cbnnews.com. You can also watch CBN News programs anytime on our CBN News channel. Have a great day.